dolorosa in Jerusalem that day. The soldiers try to clear the narrow streets, but the crowd pressed in to see the man condemned to die on Calvary. He was bleeding from a beating. There were stripes upon his back, and he wore a crown of thorns upon his head, and he bore with every step
God in the flesh.
the scorn of those.
In John's Gospel we read, "The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us." Today I invite you on a journey through the last days and hours of Jesus' life. Look at this pair of sandals, the kind that any one of us would wear. As you begin this journey, focus on what it meant and means for the eternal God to become one of us, to share in our suffering. At this time, think about what it means that Jesus once stood in sandals like these, just like any of us. Think about the fact that the God who created the world stepped into an ordinary human body. For a moment, meditate on the mystery, majesty, and humility of Jesus Christ, one of us, the Son of God.
He was bleeding from a beating. There were stripes upon his back.
Judas agrees to betray Jesus. We read in Matthew's Gospel, "Then one of the 12, the one called Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priests and asked, 'What are you willing to give me if I hand him over to you?' So they counted out for him 30 silver coins. From then on, Judas watched for an opportunity to hand him over." Judas was one of Jesus' closest friends, one of the disciples who had been with him for 3 years. He agreed to betray Jesus for just 30 silver coins. Look at the picture of the coins. How could Judas betray Jesus, his friend, for money? How do you think Judas felt when he looked at the coins in his hand and realized the person he had traded for them? Our own hearts are often tempted to betray Jesus over material things. Take a few moments now to talk to Jesus about this.
He was bleeding from a beating. There were stripes upon his back, and he wore a crown of thorns upon his head.
The Last Supper. We read in John's Gospel, "After he had said this, Jesus was troubled in spirit and testified, 'I tell you the truth, one of you is going to betray me.' His disciples stared at one another, at a loss to know which of them he meant. One of them, the disciple whom Jesus loved, was reclining next to him. Simon Peter motioned to this disciple and said, 'Ask him which one he means.' Leaning back against Jesus, he asked him, 'Lord, who is it?' Jesus answered, 'It is the one to whom I will give this piece of bread when I have dipped it in the dish.' Then, dipping the piece of bread, he gave it to Judas Iscariot, son of Simon. As soon as Judas took the bread, Satan entered into him. 'What you're about to do quickly,' Jesus told him. Jesus was celebrating the Passover feast with his disciples. At your next meal with your family, think of the heartbreak he must have felt at this betrayal by one of his own disciples. Someone had broken his trust, someone he trusted deeply. He knew his disciples would soon face confusion and fear. In the same way, he knows the confusion and fear we all feel at this moment. Contemplate his sorrow and his compassion for them and for us.
From a beating, there were stripes upon
Gethsemane.
his back.
Then Jesus went with his disciples to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to them, "Sit here while I go over there and pray." He took Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee along with him, and he began to be sorrowful and troubled. Then he said to them, "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me." Going a little farther, he fell with his face to the ground and prayed, "Father, if it is possible, may this cup be taken from me, yet not as I will, but as you will." Then returning to his disciples, he found them asleep. "Could you not keep awake with me for 1 hour?" he asked. "Watch and pray so that you will not fall to temptation. The spirit is willing, but the body is weak." He went away a second time and prayed, "My Father, if it is not possible for this cup to be taken away unless I drink it, then may your will be done." When he came back, he found them sleeping because their eyes were heavy. So he left them and went away once more and prayed the 3rd time, saying the same thing. Then he returned to his disciples and said to them, "Are you still sleeping and resting? Look, the hour is near, and the Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us go. Here comes my betrayer." This scene reveals the sorrow in Jesus' heart that night. He prayed to his Father that he would not have to go to the cross if there were any other way. Yet he prayed the hardest prayer any of us can pray, "Not as I will, but as you will." When Jesus said, "May this cup be taken from me," he was referring to the difficult thing his Father was asking him to bear. Yet he chose to drink the cup, even though it was very painful. Is there a cup that the Father is asking you to drink at the moment? Something about which you need to pray the prayer of Gethsemane? "Yet not as I, but as you will." Remember that Jesus chose to bear the agony of the cross, to drink that cup, to save you and I.
He was bleeding from a beating, there were stripes upon his back, and he wore a crown of thorns upon his head.
Jesus' arrest. We read in John's Gospel, when he finished praying, Jesus left with his disciples and crossed the Kedron Valley. On the other side there was an olive grove, and he and his disciples went into it. Now Judas, who betrayed him, knew the place because Jesus had often met there with his disciples. So Judas came to the grove, guiding a detachment of soldiers and some officials from the chief priests and Pharisees. They were carrying torches, lanterns, and weapons. Jesus, knowing all that was going to happen to him, went out and asked them, "Who is it you want?" "Jesus of Nazareth," they replied. "I am he," Jesus said. When he said, "I am he," they drew back and fell to the ground. And he asked them again, "Who is it you want?" And they said, "Jesus of Nazareth." "I told you that I am he," Jesus answered. "If you're looking for me, then let these men go." Then Simon Peter, who had a sword, drew it and struck the high priest's servant, cutting off his right ear. Jesus commanded Peter, "Put your sword away. Shall I not drink the cup the Father has given me?" Even though Jesus could have given the word and overpowered all the guards, he let himself be bound and taken away. Look at the rope. Remember that Jesus was bound with a rope like this one. He chose to submit to a very difficult way of the cross. with every step he took.
Down the Via Dolorosa in Jerusalem.
Jesus' trial. We read in Matthew's Gospel, those who had arrested Jesus took him to Caiaphas the high priest, where the teachers of the law and the elders had assembled. But Peter followed him at a distance right up to the courtyard of the high priest. He entered and sat down with the guards to see the outcome. The chief priests and the whole Sanhedrin were looking for false evidence against Jesus so that they could put him to death. But they did not find any, though many false witnesses came forward. Then the governor's soldiers took Jesus into the praetorium and gathered the whole company of soldiers around him. They stripped him and put a robe on him, and they twisted thorns together and put it on his head as a crown. Then they put a staff in his right hand and knelt in front of him and mocked him. "Hail, King of the Jews," they said. They spat on him and took the staff and struck him on the head again and again. After this, they mocked him, then took off the robe and put his own clothes on him and led him away to be crucified. Imagine you're in Peter's shoes. You look over the courtyard where Jesus has been tried and mocked. You know that this is unjust, and as you stand here, you see people telling lies about him. You watch him being beaten and mocked. Here is the man you've followed for 3 years, the one you've put your hope in, now being sentenced to death. In your heart, you believe that he is God, the promised Messiah of the Jewish people. Your whole world is now crashing around you, and worst of all, you have now denied that you even know him. Look at the purple robe and the crown of thorns used by angry soldiers to wound and humiliate Jesus. Speak to him and tell him how you feel. The crucifixion. We read in Matthew's Gospel, as they were going out, they met a man from Cyrene named Simon, and they forced him to carry the cross with Jesus. Then they came to a place called Golgotha, meaning the place of the skull. And there they offered him wine to drink mixed with gall, but after tasting it, he refused to drink it. When they had crucified him, they divided up his clothes by casting lots. And sitting down, they kept watch over him there. Above his head they placed the written charge against him: "This is Jesus, the King of the Jews." 2 robbers were crucified with him, one on his right and one on his left. Those who passed by hurled insults at him, shaking their heads and saying, "You who are going to destroy the temple and build it in 3 days, now save yourself. Come down from the cross if you are the Son of God." In the same way, the chief priests, the teachers of the law, and the elders mocked him. "He saved others," they said, "but he can't save himself. Let him come down now from the cross and we will believe in him. He trusts in God. Let God rescue him now if he wants him, for he did say, 'I am the Son of God.'" Here is Jesus dying a brutal death on a Roman cross, an instrument of torture. Kneel in front of a cross in your home and picture yourself at the scene. The sin of all human beings made Jesus go to the cross, not the Roman soldiers who arrested him and beat him. His love for sinful human beings held him there. He could have answered the taunts by calling down the angels of heaven to bring him down, but he didn't. Out of love for us, he chose to stay. Look at the picture of the hammer and nails. Think of a sin in your life, something in your past that you have done or something that you did not do. Maybe an attitude your heart tells you is disappointing to God. Think about this and realize that with every hammer blow that was inflicted on his body and the pain of each nail, your sin and the sins of all humanity were washed away. That day in history, with each hammer stroke, remember Jesus' words, "It is finished." He bore the pain of the cross so you and I could be forgiven and set free from slavery to sin. Jesus' death. We read in Matthew's Gospel, "From the 6th hour until the 9th hour, darkness came over the whole land. About the 9th hour, Jesus cried out in a loud voice, 'Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani,' which means, my God, why have you forsaken me?" When some of those standing there heard this, they cried, "He is calling on Elijah." Immediately, one of them ran and got a sponge, filled it with wine vinegar, put it on a stick, and offered it to him. The rest said, "Now leave him alone. Let's see if Elijah comes to save him." And when Jesus had cried out again in a loud voice, he gave up his spirit. When Jesus died that day, so many people watching must have thought that their hopes had died as well. Darkness and despair came over the whole land that day. The same darkness and despair that we can feel with us at the moment. Take a candle in your house and light it, and then extinguish the flame. Remember the darkness that the whole world and heaven itself must have felt on that day. Jesus' burial. We read in Matthew's Gospel, as evening approached, there came a rich man from Arimathea named Joseph, who had himself become a disciple of Jesus. Going to Pilate, he asked for Jesus' body, and Pilate ordered that it be given to him. Joseph took the body, wrapped it in clean linen cloth, and placed it in his own new tomb that he had cut out of the rock. He rolled a big stone in front of the entrance to the tomb and went away. Mary Magdalene and the other Mary were sitting there opposite the tomb. Imagine the heaviness of the rock that sealed Jesus' tomb. You can imagine its weight. You can also sense the heavy weight that the disciples and those who loved Jesus must have felt as this tomb was sealed. In their eyes, death had won. This was a stone that no one could move. It was final. Jesus was gone, and he was buried. All seemed to be lost. But our faith today points us to hope, and that hope we will celebrate on Easter Day.
Down the Via Dolorosa in Jerusalem that day, the soldiers tried to clear the narrow streets, but the crowd pressed in to see the man condemned to die on Calvary. He was bleeding from a beating. There were stripes upon his back, and he wore a crown of thorns upon his head. And he bore with every step the scorn of those who cried out for his death. Down the Via Dolorosa, called the way of suffering, like a lamb came down Messiah, Christ the King. But he chose to walk that road out of his love for you and me. Down the Via Dolorosa,